What if the biggest threat to all of us isn't something we can see coming, but something we can't even imagine? Today, we're diving into the kinds of catastrophic risks we just aren't preparing for, and what our deep past can teach us about how to survive them.
This quote, it's about the 2008 financial crisis, and it reveals a really terrifying truth. The meltdown didn't happen because of a lack of data. No, it was a failure of the collective imagination. Think about that. The smartest people in the room just could not picture a world where the whole system could simply break.
So, that begs the question, right? If we completely miss the 2008 crisis, what other, even bigger risks are we missing right now? We're talking about the kinds of existential threats that have happened before, and let's be honest, history basically guarantees will happen again.
So here's the plan. We're going to look at 4 big categories of risk. Threats from the cosmos, massive eruptions from the Earth itself, how pandemics completely reshuffle society, and finally, the really unique risks we're creating for ourselves in the modern world. Okay, first up, the cosmos. And I want you to forget about giant city-killing asteroids for a minute. The universe has way more subtle and, frankly, more insidious ways of messing with our world. Earth's deep history is just filled with these cosmic encounters that have totally shaped life on this planet.
Just get a load of this. 42,000 years ago, our planet's magnetic shield, that invisible force field that protects us from all that deadly solar radiation, it pretty much collapsed. The magnetic poles actually flipped, and our defenses against space were weakened to a terrifying degree. And this isn't sci-fi, folks. It's literally written in the rings of ancient trees.
Scientists call this the atom's transitional geomagnetic event. And it wasn't like flipping a switch. Nah, this happened over centuries. As you can see here, the magnetic field started to get weaker and weaker, radiation levels shot up, the whole climate cooled down, and yeah, Australia's giant megafauna started to disappear. And the scale of this collapse was just staggering. At its absolute lowest point, Earth's magnetic field dropped to just 6% of its strength today. For a while, our planet was basically naked, just completely exposed to the harshness of space.
The consequences just cascaded across the globe. The weakened shield damaged the ozone layer, weather patterns went haywire, and our own ancestors were right in the thick of it. We actually see an increase in cave use during this exact period, and some scientists even speculate that the boom in red ochre handprints we find might have been a kind of prehistoric sunscreen against all that intense UV radiation.
Okay, so that was the ancient past. But what if a massive solar storm, a kind of less dramatic version of that same magnetic collapse, hit us today? Well, the potential global economic loss is estimated at a mind-blowing $2.7 trillion. Our entire civilization, everything, runs on electricity. That makes us uniquely vulnerable in a way our ancestors never, ever were. But we don't have to look up to the stars to find these catastrophic risks. Sometimes, the greatest threats come from deep within our own planet. A single, massive volcanic eruption can have truly global consequences.
For example, let's talk about the Laki eruption in Iceland back in 1783. This wasn't your typical mountaintop volcano. It was a massive crack in the Earth's surface that just tore open and spewed enormous amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere for 8 straight months. It created this dry, choking fog that just blotted out the sun and spread all across Europe and beyond.
The effects were devastating. A quarter of Iceland's population died, but the impact was global. This quote from the oral history of the Kawark people in Alaska, thousands of miles away, it just says it all. They called it the time summertime did not come. And of course, famine followed, a direct result of a volcano erupting on the other side of the planet.
And a modern supereruption? Oh, it would be so much worse. A global temperature drop of just 3 to 4 degrees Celsius is enough to wipe out the entire Canadian grain harvest. Ash would shut down air travel and GPS, and you see how a so-called natural disaster very quickly becomes a societal one, as famine leads to social unrest and, conflict.
But catastrophic risks don't always come from the sky or the ground. As we've all recently experienced firsthand, pandemics are way more than just public health crises. They're these profound social and economic events that can completely reshuffle the deck of society.
Just look at what happened after the Black Death in the 14th century. This table shows something absolutely crucial. In Western Europe, where they had stronger institutions, the massive labor shortage gave peasants more bargaining power, which helped end serfdom. But over in Eastern Europe, where institutions were weaker, the landowners just clamped down even harder, making serfdom worse.
So here's the key takeaway. The exact same disaster had completely opposite effects.
It wasn't the plague alone that decided what happened, it was the social structure it slammed into. A society's resilience is absolutely shaped by its pre-existing conditions.
Which brings us to what might be the most unsettling truth of all. The greatest hazards we face, well, they might be the ones we are creating ourselves. Disasters aren't just acts of God. They're a function of our own choices.
This is the key equation for understanding risk in the 21st century. A disaster happens when a hazard, like a volcano or a solar flare, intersects with a vulnerable society. We can't always stop the hazards, but we are the ones who create the vulnerability.
And oh boy, have we made ourselves vulnerable. We've built this entire global economic system on hyper-efficiency, just-in-time production, barely any inventories, supply chains that stretch across the entire planet. It's a marvel of engineering, sure, but it is as fragile as a house of cards. There is almost no slack in the system.
So, let's just walk through a terrifyingly plausible scenario. A massive solar flare hits Earth. That's our trigger. The immediate impact? Widespread, long-term power outages. Right away, our interconnected systems start to fail. Banking goes dark. Government services grind to a halt. And then, the system that keeps food on our shelves, the global supply chain, it just collapses. One single event triggers a total systemic failure.
And get this, all of this is based on risks we can already understand. It doesn't even begin to touch on the completely new risks we're creating right now, like misaligned artificial intelligence, a catastrophic risk so new, so different, that we are only just now beginning to imagine its consequences.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The greatest risks are the ones we fail to imagine. The question isn't if another catastrophic event will happen. History tells us it absolutely will. The real question is whether we, this time, can develop that collective imagination to see what's coming and build a more resilient world before it's too late.